So Britain is on the cusp of having yet another new political party. But you're probably already aware of this if you follow this channel, because we're a pretty informed community over here, and it can be a little bit intimidating for new viewers, which is why I assume so few return. Now, this new political party hasn't yet formed, and may never form. At the moment, it's just a series of secret meetings that have been leaked to the Guardian newspaper, taking place between some of the remnants of Corbyn's Lotto team. And it seems this group is having a few teething problems, so I thought I'd stick my oar in and put together the official COPE guide to creating your own political party. 7 easy steps to winning power. Known at present as the Collective, which is not the name of the party because there isn't a party. There might be one day, but there isn't right now. There's just the Collective, which sounds a bit like a Doctor Who enemy of some sort, or a 1990s psychological thriller in which only Tom Cruise knows the truth and has no time to explain to anyone what's going on. Which is the sort of powerful rhetorical stance I'd advise Rachel Reeves to employ when anyone has the temerity to quiz her on what the hell she's doing. How dare you question Rachel Reeves' actions? Of course there's a plan. There's just no time to explain. Just leave it to the experts, yeah? Like Rachel Reeves, whose CV speaks, well, for itself. The problem I have with Rachel Reeves is this aggressive, intimidating, menacing, violent attitude that's bubbling just below the surface. Whenever you see her asked a simple question like, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And what are you doing? Andrew, we're going to have to make tough choices. Show your face, Andrew. Which is really, you know, for someone like myself, a coward, very upsetting and triggering. We're not breaking any promises. We're not breaking the manifesto. Shut up. Okay, it's not really an impression. It's more of an aura encapsulation. And look, I don't want to mock Rachel Reeves' voice. That's the last thing I want to do. I mean, personally, I find that kind of thing a little bit childish. Yeah, it is childish, actually. I can't help it. That's right, exactly, Rachel. And more than that, it undermines any actual critique you might have of Rachel Reeves and the Labour Party. You know, the fact that you would have to resort to this sort of tactic. Or at least it should do. But unfortunately, and I hate to say this, in this case, it's actually entirely appropriate because the thing about Rachel Reeves is that her entire political project is based on her appearance. Her appearance as a competent manager of the economy, but not, it's important to note, an actual one, an actual competent manager. As with Starmer, who shares Reeves's nasal hostility, you'll notice from time to time, every so often, every once in a while, they'll even actually admit this. They'll say things like, it's important that the government is perceived to be honest, seen to have integrity. And the reason for this is that Labour and the Tories have the same political outlook, the same donors, the same supporters, and on occasion the same MPs. And most importantly, they have the same failing policies. So it's really all about presenting yourself in a better light than your opponent. It's a very surface level way of operating, and therefore criticism of the party and what it's doing must unfortunately be equally superficial. And as I said, no one is more upset by that than me. And me, I'm also upset. Yes, well, you're always upset, aren't you? So what you're saying is that because there is no substantive difference between the policies of the two parties, everything comes down to how these policies are packaged and the faces, the personalities behind them. Yep, that's exactly right, Rachel. And you see this reflected in the way the news media focuses on the manners, charm, and even, dare I say it, charisma, rather than their views, ideas, or political positions. And that's why corruption, even on a very small scale, Keir Starmer, is so damaging for these people. Because everything hinges on the quality of their character rather than the political program they're supposed to be implementing. It's also why lying on your CV is a big deal, Rachel. No, shut up. No, it's not. You were lying. And so, in conclusion, it's actually quite important that I do this work. I'm sorry, Rachel, it's true. This is actually quite a sophisticated critique of the current political situation in the UK. Protest all you like, Rachel. It's an airtight argument. Here at Complaints on a Plate, we like to see ourselves more as a think tank than a failing YouTube channel. And what think tanks like to do is come up with some horrible thing they want to implement and then work backwards from there to create a robust argument to support it. And I think that's what I've done right now. And it's important to note that this aggression in Rachel Reeves, it's not really expressed in what she says or does. No. As many people who have experienced domestic abuse or workplace bullying will attest, you don't actually have to do or say anything. It's more about vibes, yeah? With thugs like Rachel Reeves, it's all about the implication. It's what's not said that's so frightening. And bear in mind, this is all coming from a guy who has been slapped and punched by multiple women. And not always simply as a requirement to finish. And I know what you're thinking, of course this guy's been slapped about a bit. He almost certainly deserved it. But surely you wouldn't victim blame, would you? Would you? Now I know the viewers of this channel are a distrustful bunch, prone to not taking me at my word, so let me tell you a story. Once on a night out in Soho many years ago, with my good friend Greg Wallace. No, he wasn't there that time. Once on a night out in Soho without Greg Wallace, I attempted to solicit Molly, or Gurns if you prefer, from two women who happened to be standing around the smoking area of a club from which I'd recently egressed. And they said to me, absolutely, we can definitely provide you with that. And so, after agreeing on a price, I handed over the said amount in cash, but then, after one of the women pocketed the money, they calmly turned in tandem and walked away. Now, I was slightly miffed by this, if I'm honest with you. And on top of that, I was exceedingly drunk. So I decided to run after the two women, shouting something along the lines of, "Give me my F-wording money back." And I appreciate now that I shouldn't have sworn at the ladies. In my defense, passions were running high. However, despite my language, I don't think I deserved to be grabbed by the shirt, which was ripped, and then punched in the face, which is what happened. I think I was actually punched a few times before I gave up. Gave up my pursuit. Anyway, I mention this just because the whole ordeal came flooding back to me when I saw Rachel Reeves aggressively presenting the budget at Parliament. The other thing to note about Rachel Reeves is that she herself is probably completely unaware of how she oppresses and terrorizes those around her. For you see, much of what is happening is on a subconscious or unconscious level, and so, as I'm sure she would agree, it's best to defer to the experts on these kind of things. And having just consulted my own CV, lo and behold, it turns out that I actually worked as an in-house psychiatrist at the Bank of England for many years. Who'd have thunk it? I don't want to go into it too much, you know, client confidentiality and all that, but Andrew Bailey, a lot of demons, a lot of pain. Anyway, as you can see from my CV, I'm an expert, and I can tell you 100% that Rachel Reeves is a sociopath with a capacity for tremendous physical violence. In my opinion, my expert opinion. No, I'm not a sociopath. Shut up. You better take that back or I'm gonna... All right, Rachel. It's getting old. Joining Rachel and I for this rundown of the 7 steps to making your own political party is friend of the show and YouTube algorithm favourite, Jimmy Savile. Now then. No, not Jimmy Savile. He can't... Shut up, Rachel. Jimmy is a great draw to this channel. And sometimes we have to make tough choices, yeah, to keep the show on the road. Talk about clickbait. I'm the master bait. Oh, Jimmy, you'll bury us all. Oh, I wouldn't bury you. At least, not immediately. Out of interest, Jimmy, what political party do you support? Oh, I'm a Conservative, of course. Maggie and myself had a lot in common. Right, and would you say that the Conservative Party, the Conservative movement, have a problem with the P word? The P word? You'll have to forgive me. I've been dead for a number of years, and I'm not up to speed on the latest lingo. Oh yeah, the P word, it's like people who commit essay, but on children. Sorry, I'm really struggling here. Okay, I understand. It's like, for example, the R word. The R word, yeah. This is R worded. This right now is R word. No, this is the other R word. What's happening right now? The other R word. Yeah, there's two R words. Well, I'd say there's at least two. No, there's two words that are called the R word, and which the R word that we're talking about is Catholic Church. How about that? You know what I mean? Oh, the Catholic Church. Got you. Yes, I was a tremendous devotee of the Catholic Church. I followed all its customs and practices. Yep, I'm well aware. But what I'm asking is, do you think there's a problem with P words in the Conservative Party? Well, I'd say there's no greater number of P words, as you put it, in the Conservative Party than in society as a whole. Oh, really? So you don't deny that there are P words in the Conservative Party? Wouldn't you say that one P word is one too many? Good point, Rachel. And do you not think that inbuilt into conservative thinking is a logic of power dynamics and exploitation that often leads to, how should we say this, P-word-dilic outcomes? Would you agree, for example, that a lot of conservative thought and rhetoric masks, perhaps unconsciously, a kind of P-word-dilic way of thinking? Well, that's quite a lot to take on board. I've only recently come back from the dead, but let me shoot from the hip. I'd say we should definitely be open to such possibilities when dealing with such a serious issue as this, because to immediately dismiss such ideas would itself, it seems to me, be part of the problem. Yeah? What do you think about that? So true, Jimmy, so true. Should we get on with this? Okay, 7 steps to creating your own political party. Step 1, the name. So the name is the most important and most difficult hurdle when it comes to starting a political party because, as we've already discussed, political parties contain interchangeable MPs, policies, and donors. So the name is really the only thing that distinguishes you. Think about it this way, right? Even the popular girl group, the Sugar Babes, whatever you... sorry to interject, but I think you'll find that their name is Sugar Babes, not the Sugar Babes. You know? Like Pixies? Yeah, everybody knows that. Idiot. Fine. Take the popular girl group Sugar Babes, and whatever you think of them, at least they have a body of work. A back catalogue of songs that define what Sugar Babes is, no matter who happens to be a member of the group at any particular time. So, for example, if you replace the current lineup of Sugar Babes, which, if I haven't been grossly misinformed, happens at this point in time to be the original 3 members, if you replace them with 3 members of, say, Little Mix, or even 4 members for that matter, or let's go wild and say 2 members of Little Mix, 2 Spice Girls, and 1 Jedward, and you then changed the name of the group from Sugar Babes to the Social Democratic Party of Great Britain, they would still, in essence, be Sugar Babes if they were singing such hits as Push the Button and Round Round, because that is, at its core, what Sugar Babes is. It's the body of work, yeah? Now, if you replaced the entire Parliamentary Labour Party with, say, both members of Jedward, and you changed the party's name to Planet Jedward, I ask you, what exactly would remain of the Labour Party then? Links to the unions? I wouldn't hold your breath. Although having said that, Jedward would probably form tighter links, if anything, because they're good eggs. Okay, that was a bad example. What on earth are you talking about? Okay, the point I'm trying to make is that a political party is really just a name, a brand, a company, or 2 in the case of the Labour Party, registered at Company House. And it's a company that doesn't do anything or sell anything. A political party is basically a bank account, an email list, a website, and maybe a few properties if you're really successful. And so the name really is all you have. And there's limited options, at least in the English-speaking world, where the rule generally is that the name has to be one word. And as always with these things, the best names are already taken. Labour is a classic, of course, and is taken in most English-speaking countries, as is Liberals. You could go with Labour 2000, I guess, or Labour _party _ goblin. But a popular choice nowadays is a name beginning with re, like reform, reclaim, resist. Basically anything that would make a good Matrix sequel. Revitalize, revenge, regret, regress, relax, relapse, regurgitate are all available. Now, it is acceptable to have two names if the first simply denotes that you're a regional offshoot of a larger party, like, for example, the Scottish Labour Party or Scottish National Party, which is an adjunct of the British National Party but focuses exclusively on Scottish fascism. Anyway, another thing about Rachel Reeves is that the problem with Rachel Reeves and people like Rachel Reeves, and I don't want to group them together and make them into a target, but the problem with people like Rachel Reeves is that they like to group people together and make them into targets. Targets for people's scorn. What they like to do is take systemic problems happening at a national and international level, and which are direct outcomes of policies put in place by government, and blame these problems on particular groups of people. And they give these groups names like benefit scroungers, or illegal migrants, or designated terrorist organizations, all of which mean nothing. And then they say, what we need to do as a society is we need to just incentivize these people to change their ways. We just need to nudge them, cajole them. And not only is all this very patronizing and infantilizing, but the only thing they've actually come up with so far as a way to incentivize people is to impoverish them and increasingly strip them of their rights and access to services. And so I think these people, these Rachel Reeves types, let's call them vote scroungers, I think this group of people is the real problem in society. And what we need to do is find a way to incentivize them, get them the right anger management courses and voice coaches. Step 2, colour. Once you've got your name, you have to pick your colour, which it doesn't really matter what it is. It's just important that you have one, and only one. Now, traditionally, blue is for boys, red means danger, green means naive and inexperienced, and yellow signals that you wish to be pissed on. Step 3, symbol. Now, this is an interesting one because obviously the Tories logo used to be a torch, which, as I'm sure you're well aware, is traditionally associated with lynching mobs. But this was changed by David Cameron in the mid-noughties to a tree, which is also often associated with lynching mobs. Labour have the rose, the Lib Dems have a bird, and Change UK, or CUC if you'd rather, the short-lived centre-right party in 2019, went with the very inspiring logo of 4 black bars, not dissimilar to the cold and meaningless lines and squares of the authoritarian Norse Fire Party depicted in V for Vendetta. Another thing about Rachel Reeves, one issue to be wary of when you identify a group of people like the vote scroungers and you fixate on them and you blame them for all society's ills, one issue that you may have is that you turn them into targets of hate, and this can easily spill over into violence. And so I just want to make it clear that this channel does not condone illegal violence being enacted on senior cabinet figures in Downing Street. This channel does not condone, say, Sir Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves being dragged out into the street, stripped naked, forced to complete a laborious .gov job seekers allowance application form before being executed in front of the world's media. Because that would be illegal. Here at Complaints on a Plate, we don't moralise. We're not here to pass judgment. It's not our place to say whether it's morally acceptable to take this kind of action. It's just that it's illegal and we don't condone illegality. Just as this channel couldn't possibly comment on whether there's a moral equivalence between private healthcare companies in the US exploiting the often fatal medical problems of their own customers for huge profits and the shooting dead of a healthcare provider CEO in the street. We're not here to make any moral judgment on that. We have no position, one way or the other, on murderous violence, to be honest. We just report the facts, yeah? And the fact is that one of those things is perfectly legal in the United States of America and the other isn't. I've seen a lot of people saying online, why didn't this guy have any security? And you know, one of the reasons might be that when it comes to securing someone who is the object of hatred of millions of grieving American families many of which are armed. Perhaps the security companies made a calculation and thought, actually, this guy's too much of a liability, you know? We're going to have to refuse him coverage. But as I say, here at Complaints on the Plate, we don't endorse illegality, murderous or otherwise. But what we do endorse, because this channel just reports the facts and sometimes endorses things, what we do endorse is working within the legislative framework to bring about changes in the law that would forward one's desired political outcomes, murderous or otherwise. You know, if Obama has taught us anything, it's that good things come to those that legislate. However, having said all that, when you look back through history, you see that unfortunately there is a quiet dignity in being brutally murdered. And I don't think that's something which is deserved in this case. Revenge is a dish best served continuously and relentlessly. And in our modern, advanced, sophisticated society, the best way to punish people, or incentivize them, same thing, is to impoverish them. So in the case of the government, what we could do is sue it. Pudding. Sue it in the way that companies are allowed to for some reason. Or even better, fine it. And fine Starmer and Reeves personally until they're bankrupt, forced onto the streets, and so loathed and maligned that they become unemployable. And then, when you see them begging for change at Liverpool Street Station, you can have a little bit of fun with them. Please, God, I really can't do Starmer.
Please, could you spare some change?
Change? You want change, Keir Starmer? Well, we all want change. But implementing that change, delivering that change, it's difficult, isn't it? And of course, he will claim that he needs the money to get into a shelter for the night, but I've always wondered with Starmer, you know, the red cheeks, the way he gleefully serves himself at pubs. Do you remember that photo of him with a bottle of Jameson's whiskey sitting in his office? I mean, sure, some people like to celebrate the end of a really good day's work. You know, if they've just finished a big project or something, they might crack open a bottle of whiskey, celebrate with a little glass. But that's normally like a nice whiskey for a special occasion. Not an averagely priced whiskey like Jameson's whiskey, which is generally bought by whiskey drinkers to be consumed immediately. Starmer strikes me as one of those people who's like, oh, what a great day. Like every day, I'm going to celebrate another really successful day by downing a bottle of whiskey because it's another special occasion. But yes, anyway, back to Starmer begging at Liverpool Street Station. Sorry, mate. It would be great, wouldn't it, just to say, sorry, mate. I don't have anything on. Oh, you know, grit your teeth. Oh, so sorry. I don't have anything on me, mate. Cashless society and all that jizz. And the most important thing is that there wouldn't be anything violent about that, would there? Unless, of course, things got so bad that Starmer and Reeves committed the S word. The S. Shut up, Jimmy, that bit's over now. But if that did happen, that would really be on them, wouldn't it? They would be bringing the violence to the table. So shame on them. Shame. Step 4. Funding. Once you have your name, colour and symbol, you're pretty much set. And now, it's time to make some money. First things first, you'll want to set up a limited company or two. Labour, for example, has Labour Party Nominees Limited and Labour Party Properties Limited. Now, there are a few ways you can go about making money. Membership, donors, kickbacks. I suggest doing all of them. But as with any new business, party, it can be difficult to get off the ground. There's that Dragon's Den catch-22, where in order to get investment, you need to already be somewhat successful. In order to get donors, you need to have members. And in order to get members, you need donors. So it's a good idea to go for some low-hanging fruit, get some buzz around the country about what you're doing. And the best way to do this, I would suggest, is talking about immigration. What you want to do is you want to get yourself down to Dover and get some snaps of yourself on the beach looking tough. Looking out at the sea and saying, you're not getting past me, all right? I'll be here all day if I have to. Of course, as a politician, even though you're at the beach, you'll have to wear a full business suit. Wearing a full suit at the beach, who do you think you are? Jedward? Another way you can get things going quickly is if you can get an MP or two on board. I would suggest approaching Lee Anderson, who you could call the Heidi Range of UK politics. Now that's what you call a callback. The main thing, though, is that you need to find a sweet spot where you can juggle the demands of multimillionaire donors and the scum of the earth, rank and vile membership. So what you don't want to do is talk about anything that might put these two groups in conflict, such as class. But getting back to murderous violence, one thing that's occurred to me in the last few weeks is that if Putin really does have accurate hypersonic missiles that can't be stopped by any NATO defenses, and it seems that he does, then I would plead with him, if he does happen to be a subscriber and viewer, because, you know, a lot of subscribers don't actually watch the videos, I've noticed. I mean, he could be a viewer without being a subscriber. I don't know what's worse. Anyway, if he is watching, and Starmer actually, I need everybody on board for this. If Russia is going to launch a retaliatory strike on the UK for the use of British weapons hitting targets within Russia, which doesn't seem unreasonable, I would request that Russia attempt to keep civilian casualties at a minimum by targeting locations such as Downing Street, Parliament, or if it's easier, Millbank Tower. Now, obviously, the loss of any human life is always tragic and regrettable. But, you know, if a strike is unavoidable, then I think Keir Starmer would agree that he'd rather give up his own life in service of the country, as he likes to say, as he's made it clear again and again that he believes refusing to negotiate with Russia is definitely worth dying for. And I think you'd have to be quite cynical to imagine that Starmer is happy for thousands upon thousands of increasingly younger and younger Ukrainian men to give up their lives, not to mention the thousands of civilian deaths, while under no circumstances would he sacrifice his own life. I think more of Starmer than that, to be honest with you. And I know, if and when the time came, Starmer would gladly give his own life for the cause, because he really believes in it. And he'd rather do that than let an innocent British citizen die, you know? It's called taking responsibility. And further to this point, we know that there is no way that Russia's hypersonic missiles can be stopped, and that they are highly accurate, but even with the best will in the world, there's no guarantee that they will hit the exact target at the exact right time. They will definitely hit Downing Street, sure, and they will definitely kill people. But it could turn out, you know, that an innocent painter and decorator might get hit, and Starmer might survive, you know, cowering in the fireplace. And no one would hate that more than Starmer himself. He cowered out of instinct. He didn't know what he was doing. And they just have to fire another strike until they do get Starmer. It could be Larry the Downing Street cat that gets hit. Oh, now I've got your attention, haven't I? No one, least of all Starmer, wants to see little Larry get blown to smithereens, especially if it turns out all to be in vain. As I say, nobody, this channel, no one wants to see Starmer's playful laugh silenced forever. But we're talking about the real world here, and we've got to make tough choices. So I propose, since the missiles will definitely get through and definitely kill people, but might not get their intended target, I propose we nominate someone, a trusted individual, to patrol the halls of Downing Street with, say, a cartoonishly large hammer or mallet, like Timmy's mallet, but a real mallet, because like a soft play mallet would... I mean, you could kill Starmer with a soft play mallet, it would take a long time. I mean, it's not fair to him. So they patrol Downing Street with this huge mallet, and then whenever Putin gives the order, they clobber to death a member of the government. I just think it's the safest way. It's the logical, practical, pragmatic, reasonable, sensible, grown-up thing to do. And funnily enough, just a quick consultation of the old CV, and it turns out I'm uniquely qualified for the role. Step 5. Branding. Patriotism is a pretty important part of any political party's branding. But you don't want to get too excited about it. You don't want to be too gung-ho. Because that's just not the British way, is it? I see a lot of people who claim to be patriotic, waving flags and singing songs. And as a real Brit, as the most British person, I find it very unbecoming. Yeah, it strikes me as a little bit desperate and decidedly un-British. You don't need to wave a flag or learn a little song to prove to someone that you're British. A British person doesn't need to prove anything to anyone. There's no rules. You don't need to learn anything. I tell you, there's nothing less British than a test for Britishness. If someone dared give me a citizen's test, I'd just draw a massive penis on the answer sheet and paper airplane the damn thing straight at the examiner's face. And I'd bloody well get full marks for doing so, because I'm British. Sunday roast? Possibly. But maybe I'll just indulge in a Sunday spit roast. How about that? The butler and I high-fiving after a 36-hour whiz-fueled bender, with a Serbian snuff film I bought off some guy at the bookies playing in the background for ambience. Now that's Britishness. The 11th of the 11th? I'll tell you where I'll be. Why, that's opening time, you fool. You see, I do what I damn please. Maybe I'll drink tea on the lawn, or maybe I'll drink swan's cum, and then kill the fowl and eat it. No crowd king can tell me what I can or can't kill. That C-word can F-word off back to the A-word of Europe, as far as I'm concerned. And don't get me started on the Queen. Paying off Andrew's victims? What an utterly depraved woman. What a disgusting, wretched piece of filth. And the Clifton Suspension Bridge. Yeah, not bad, I suppose. Isambard. But it's not good enough for Britain, is it? I mean, like so many of us, I've perused the complete works of Shakespeare, and I thought, yeah, good try. But I think the English language has a bit more potential than that, don't you? Churchill? 6 years to beat the Nazis, and you needed help from the Yanks, and you lost the Empire? What an utter loser. Not to mention the Bengal genocide, yeah? All of these people are vermin. They're an embarrassment to this country and everything it stands for, and anyone who has a good word to say about any of them is putting Britain down. And I won't stand for it. Britain could be so much better if it wasn't for its history and architecture and culture and language and people. And if you don't like what I'm saying, then bully for you, because I'm British and I'll say what I goddamn please. Now, take a place like Syria, sure. Whether it's a brutal dictatorship or marauding gangs of armed men, you get the impression that people over there don't speak their mind too much. Who's in power today? Oh, a group of armed thugs. Well, I definitely support, if a group of armed men come into your town, you're going to make friends with them. You're going to say, yes, we're on your side, sure. Absolutely behind you guys. But that's just not the British way, is it? Here in Britain, you can say what you jolly well want. Except when it comes to Israel, where you might get the police kicking down your door in the early hours of the morning and seizing your devices, which has happened to a number of journalists recently. Yes, but apart from that, Britain is a free country. Although you might get arrested for tweeting. Yes, well, there is that, yes, you may get arrested for tweeting. But apart from that, free country. And you might get sued for libel even if what you write is true, but you're unable to afford the extortionate legal fees required to prove it in court. Yes, okay, apart from all of those, free country. Step 6. Timing. In the late noughties, a French bus driver living in the UK started a party called the Roman Party, which literally advocated for people to think about the Roman Empire more. At the time, the movement failed to make much of an impact. But imagine that now. The problem with Rachel Reeves is, and look, I don't know anything about anything, and I especially don't know anything about the economy. But it seems to me that a lot of people seem to think, and I know I certainly do, that the government isn't really in control of the economy, even though they basically bought it outright in 2008. And one of the reasons I think this is that they are constantly telling us that this is the case. The amount of times that Reeves and Starmer come on the TV and said something along the lines of, oh, we can't do that. Obviously, we'd love to, but we just can't do it. We've got to make tough choices. And I'm like, whoa. Who's forcing you to make all these tough choices, Starmer? Tell us who it is. Tell us who's bullying you. You could even set Rachel Reeves on them. Or even worse, Wes Streeting. You've got to stand up for yourself, Gia. Don't get pushed around into making choices that you don't want to make. Who's the Prime Minister here, yeah? That's right. You are. Now, someone who does claim to know something about the economy is Richard Murphy, and he says Reeves is planning to run a current budget surplus in the next few years. And I quote, reducing the size of the economy by choice as a consequence of her enormous desire to bring down the level of government debt. She's choosing to go for recession rather than growth. Richard Murphy also claims that Britain doesn't even have a debt crisis. But you can prove anything with experts, can't you? You've just got to find the right one. Either way, though, the key problem, and the reason I think that so many people get so frustrated with this endless news cycle of budgets and relaunches, the endless interviews of Reeves and Starmer and John McTurran and John Ashworth turning up for no apparent reason, the endless whittlings and prattlings of the newsagents and the rest is politics and daily politics and question time, and on it goes. The problem is that all the points that are made about growth and debt and British interests, business-friendly environment, tax and spend, everything is spoken about through these very narrow parameters, these fiscal rules and such, which constrict the government to the point where they can do, well, not very much. But of course the government could do loads of things if they broke out of the binds that bind them. What's never discussed, because Starmer is never asked, nor shows any sign of wanting to bring it out himself, is what are the forces? What are the things that are actually impeding government from breaking out of these very restrictive ways of managing the economy? What are the reasons why a government with a huge majority, a fiat currency, governing a populace largely unplagued by sectarian violence and, at least for now, climate catastrophes, why is it that a government in this position is so unable to steer things in the right direction? Does it have something to do with globalization? Is it the market by any chance? The huge power wielded by the City of London? I don't know, because it's never discussed. I mean, it could be that Rachel Reeves is some kind of MK Ultra assassin, or an alien, or a lizard, or a Jew. Maybe Rachel Reeves is trans. Maybe she's all of these things combined. People might scoff at these ideas, especially Starmer, but until there's an open debate about what's going on, you'd be foolish to rule anything out. Take, for example, off the top of my head, free healthcare in the US. Why isn't that happening? Can the US afford it? Of course. Poorer countries afford it, and it's actually cheaper to have socialized healthcare than it is to run on a private model. Is it popular? Overwhelmingly, yes. Now, I'm sure there's lots of reasons why it's difficult to implement that, why it might not be possible to achieve overnight. I'm sure there are lots of obstacles. But they're not insurmountable, are they? We're not talking about the laws of physics here, which themselves have actually turned out to be quite loosey-goosey. What we're talking about are man-made systems, laws and institutions, all of which can be changed. And you would think a politician interested in moving towards free healthcare would use their public platform to identify those obstacles and explain how we as a society can work to overcome them. But of course, this is very naive, isn't it? We all know that the politicians, well, they're in the pocket of the healthcare providers that fund their campaigns. Okay, so how do we change that? Why is there no conversation anywhere in the mainstream media about what the actual fundamental problems are? And if you're just going to accept that there can never be an actual debate on this with the actual politicians who are in power and the media that control the narrative, then don't be surprised if more and more people start turning to alternative media and alternative facts and alternative politicians and alternative political parties. Starmer and Reeves seem quite happy with the current state of things, not interested in challenging power, in altering the way this country has been run for, well, decades. They're not interested in change. If anything, they seem very fearful of it, very worried about doing anything that might disrupt this perfect system. This is how the market works, and this is how the Bank of England works, and there's nothing that can be done about it, even though over the course of the 20th century, we did many things to change how the market works and how the Bank of England works to get us into this situation. Apparently, it's impossible to undo any of them. Step 7. Actually, before we reveal the final and most important step, if you like this video, actually that doesn't really matter. You've watched the video this far, you've hate watched or whatever, but you can't deny it gave you something, didn't it, this experience? So please, if you could, take a moment to share this video with your friends and co-workers. And if you're unemployed and friendless, share it on a random Reddit thread or clip it and chuck it on TikTok. I don't care. And if you're ashamed to share this video, which I quite understand, then caveat your post with something like, look at this terrible video, look at this disgusting content that's polluting the political discourse in this country. Watch this terrible video and leave a comment expressing your displeasure. Unless it's about sound quality, in which case, keep your views to yourself. Step 7. politics. Now, this is quite an easy one because, as you may have noticed, through funding and branding, your political position has already been established. And regardless of what your opinion on the matter is, you're a centre-right party, because all parties are centre-right. And that isn't a bad thing in itself, it's just that it's a crowded market, because you've got the Conservative Party on the centre-right, you've got Labour Party on the centre-right, you've got the Liberal Democrats on the centre-right, you've got SNP on the centre-right, you've got Reform on the centre-right, you've got Greens, who are hard left. Now I'm only yanking your doodle. They're on the centre-right. Everybody's on the centre-right, Dave. And so there you have it, the 7 steps to forming a political party. I'd just like to thank my co-hosts Rachel and Jimmy, even though they didn't really contribute very much in the end. What? How dare you? Right, that's it, come here. Well, Rachel, please. Remember your anger control mantra. Austerity now.